Welcome to Lesson 115, Understanding Decimals. Today's objectives, I will be able to read decimals, identify place values for decimals, write decimals in word form, standard form, expanded form, and round decimals. So this is quite a big lesson here, but it's a lot of stuff that you've done already with whole numbers. Now we're moving it on into decimals. So one of the first things that you have to know is what are the three different forms. So I like to just remember SEW. It helps you remember SEW. S stands for standard form. Now standard is the way that you typically see things. So when we talk about standard form, it's how you usually see a number using only digits. So for example, if you were to write 156, usually you see it as a 156 all squeezed together, or 12 and 89 hundredths. So standard form is just using digits and decimals. Okay, moving on to our E, expanded form. Now expanded form has the word expand in it. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking this short little number and we're expanding it using addition. So expanded form is a number written as a sum that shows the specific value of each digit. So for that 156, we would change that to 100 plus 50 plus 6, because when you put all that together, you get 156. And for the 12 and 89 hundredths, we would change that to 10 plus 2 plus 8 tenths plus 9 hundredths. Make sure that you're writing both of these examples down, so that way you have not only a whole number example, but also a decimal example. And then W, word form. Word form is exactly what it sounds like. It's a number written out in words. So just like we did before, where we took the 156 and typed it out, 12 and 89 hundredths. Now, the problem with this one is 89 hundredths should not be written like with an 8 and a 9. And I put that on there specifically to point that out, that it should be written like this. Okay, I know it makes it a lot longer, but that is the whole point of writing it out in words, that you use words all the time. Okay, when we're writing it in standard form, then you can go back to using your numbers. Moving right along, place value. When we talk about place value, remember the place value tells us where the number is, and it helps us to realize how much the number is worth. It's important to understand that anything after the decimal point or to the right of the decimal point is considered a part. So what this means here, since I have a 1 here, it basically means that I have 1 out of 10 pieces because it's in the tenths place. Since we go all the way to the 10 thousandths, what this number right here means is that I have 1,427 pieces of 10,000. Okay, so it's a part. It's not a whole, it's a fraction, it's a part. Okay, a decimal is another form of writing a fraction. So what you see here is a whole number, so that's how many whole groups you have, and this is how many pieces you have to start making another whole group. Okay, so we have 3 different parts of our graph here, and we need to put the numbers all in the same line. So there's expanded form, word form, and standard form, all of the same number, and then we have 3 sets of the same number, but you have to line up standard form, expanded form, and word form all correctly. You can't just say, oh, okay, these are words, this is standard. No, you have to make sure to find the matching pieces. Now you have this on a much larger scale in your notes. Okay, I gave you plenty of room to write. So let's just start with standard form. Let's find the first number we can in standard form. So if I take 56 and 90 hundredths, that's how it's written in standard form. So now I need to find that number in expanded form. Right? So let's look for the expanded forms. Since this has a 7 as the biggest whole number, that's not it. This has a 6 for the biggest whole number, that is not it. Here we have a 50 plus 6. Together those give me 56, plus the 9/10 is going to be the expanded form. And then we look for the words 56 and 90 hundredths. Notice the only place that we have an and is where we find the decimal. We talked about the only time you can use the word and is when you are telling me that a decimal is in that spot. So what I want you to do, you have 2 sets left here. I want you to go ahead and pause and complete the chart, and when you come back, we'll check over your answers. All right, so you could have done 6 and 8 hundredths first, or you could have done 7 and 703 thousandths first. Doesn't matter, but this is the order that it should be in. Okay, so all of these should be together and all of these should be together. What this means is that all of these are the same number, just written in different forms. So this, and this are all the same. One's written in standard form, one's written in expanded form, one is written in word form. Now, expanded form. The reason that we're talking about expanded form is so that way you guys get an idea of what it's like for the different place values. Okay, so really that's just to help us focus on place values for the time being. Rounding with decimals. Okay, it's the same as rounding with whole numbers. It's just now you have to know more place values. So it's really important to know your place values before and after the decimal. So the first thing we want to do is find the place value you are rounding to. In this case, we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. Now, the difference between whole number and decimal place values, you'll notice, and we'll go back to that chart back here. On this side, we have THS, and on this side, we just have S. So here we have tens, and here we have tenths, hundreds, hundredths. It does make a very big difference because when you're talking about hundredths, you're talking about pieces. When you're talking about hundreds, you're talking about whole 100s. Okay, so this means you only have part of that 100. This means you have all of that 100. All right, so the nearest hundredth. Again, we're going to use our dot and box method. Place the dot under the number in that place value. So tenths, hundredths. You'll notice these follow the same pattern that the whole numbers do. However, we skip the ones. So see how it's decimal ones? There's no oneths place. Okay, so it's either tenths, hundredths, or thousandths. We don't have that oneths place, but after that, it follows the same pattern. So tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, just like it's tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000ths, so on and so forth. Right, so we find the number in the hundredths place. In this case, it's the 7. We put our dot under the 7. We put everything to the right of that number in the box. Okay, just like we did before, nothing changes. The first number inside the box tells the dotted number what to do. So this 5 is going to tell the 7 what to do. Because 5 is 5 or above, it tells the 7 to round up. So now that the 7 has rounded up, everything again changes to zeros. So it's the exact same thing, it's just now we're working with the other side of the decimal. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to do the same thing that we did last time. And we're going to look at what place we're rounding to. In this case, we are rounding to the tenths. So I put a dot under my 3 because that is the tenths place. And everything else goes into the box. Everything to the right goes into the box. The 9 tells the 3 to go up because 9 is 5 or above. It tells the 3 to go up. The 5 stays the same. The decimal stays in the same spot. The 3 changes to a 4. Everything else becomes a 0. Now the other way you can do this is you can also take the zeros off completely. So we can change this to 5 4/10. When you're rounding decimals, this is actually the way that you should do this, because now, since we rounded to the tenths, now your number ends in the tenths. So here it was 5 400,000ths. Here it is 5 4/10. However, right now my focus is that you know how to round correctly and to change these numbers to zeros. So as time goes on, we're going to work to taking away those zeros. You have 5 more here that I want you to try on your own since we have done this. I want you to round to the hundredths, the ones, hundredths, thousandths, and the ones place. So I want you to pause, take a minute, round your numbers, and then come back and check your answers. All right, so here are your answers. Again, the most common mistake is not knowing what place values are where. So in this case, hundredths, a lot of students make the mistake of thinking the 8 is in the hundredths and not the 1. Everything is shifted over once, so you have to be really careful and make sure that you're counting tenths, hundredths, thousandths. If you do that now, it'll help you and it'll become more natural in the future. So now here for number 3, the 5 told the 9 because we're rounding to the ones place. Okay, so the 9 is in the ones place. The 5 tells the 9 to round up. But you can't put 2 digits in one place. So we change the 9 to a 0 and carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, so this number is rounded to 20. Again, you can check your answers. If you have any questions on any of them, make sure to write them down or post them on Edmodo so we can go over them tomorrow. To post on Edmodo tonight, I want you to identify the form each number is written in. And I'm going to show you there's 3 numbers here. I want you to identify each of their forms. And then I want you to write that number in the other 2 forms. And then round it to the nearest tenth. So, for example, you have this number. This number is written in expanded form. To write it in standard form, I actually have to take these and line them up and add them together. Okay, so here's my number in standard form. In word form, this is 517. Okay, so we say it just like we normally would, and then we put the place value on it. So 517, and this ends in the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths place. So 517 10,000ths. And then I would round it to the tens place. So I can do that over off to the side. My 0 is in the tens place. The 5 tells the 0 to round up. So this would round to 0 1/10. So all of this is what I would need to post on Edmodo. Since I've done the first one for you as an example, you only need to do these 2 on your own. As always, if you have any questions, make sure to write them down or post them on Edmodo so we can go over them in class tomorrow.